So here's one on financial arguments. Let's have a look. Financial arguments to convince the directors that health and safety needs to be improved. Cost of fines and legal fees. The recent accident led to £3,500,000 in fines, £250,000 in legal fees, which could have been avoided with the proper safety measures. So straight away we've got a mark there. There's a couple of marks there because fines and legal fees are two separate things, and good use of information from the scenario as well. This is the first question that people come across on our online course, the first practice question that they come across. So I mark a lot of these questions, this specific question, and it's always a good indicator as to how that learner is going to get on. The way that they've approached the first question. If they've done a good job on the first question, it's a very strong indicator that they're going to do well overall. Insurance premium increases is worthy of a mark. Downtime and production loss. 2 weeks of operational downtime caused missed deadlines and contract losses. Effective safety practices can prevent such costly interruptions. So we've got a mark there. Compensation. I can't give the mark here because it hasn't really been specific enough about who it would be that's claiming for compensation. Bit of a clue. The two people died, so it's not going to be them. It's the workers' families that are going to be claiming the compensation, and that is not pointed out here. Okay, so this is a good example of where, yes, information has been used to try and provide evidence to support the initial sort of claim of, compensation claims, but it's not. It needs to be specific to the scenario. There's one thing knowing something or having information to back something up, but it's another skill that NEBOSH are testing in terms of applying it to the specific scenario that you've been provided with. If you keep that in mind, it's going to help you with this sort of thing, because you're going to instantly say to yourself, well, hopefully you'll say, well, it's not, the compensation is not going to the people that were harmed in the accident because they're dead. Oh, but it's going to be going to, their families will be able to claim. So just be aware of that. Client retention and acquisition. Negative publicity from accidents leads to lost orders. A strong safety record can restore reputation and attract clients. Good. That gets the mark. Employee absenteeism. Accidents result in trauma and extended absences, increase in recruitment and training costs. A safer workplace enhances employee morale and reduces absenteeism. So we can give a mark here, especially because they covered the training costs. Regulatory compliance, adhering to safety regulations, avoids fines. We've already sort of covered the avoids fines with the mark that we gave up here, so I can't award a mark again for the same thing. So unfortunately that one is kind of already covered. Maintenance. This is not something that NEBOSH has sort of let examiners give a mark for some reason. I think it's a good point personally. Especially if you point out, that it's not reactive maintenance, but proactive maintenance can prevent more expensive reactive maintenance repair bills. But yeah, for some reason, it's not. There's no ability for me to be able to give a mark there because it's not on the mark scheme. Training investments, training cost leads to long-term savings by preventing accidents and improving operational efficiency. You can't really give a mark there. And then competitive advantage, we might have covered this with the reputational aspect of things. But let's have a read. A strong health and safety record positions the bakery as a responsible and reliable partner, offering a competitive edge in the market. No, there's not a mark available. So let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10. So not a bad effort for a first attempt. Like I said, this is the first question that candidates on our online course are asked to have a practice with. So if you've got 60 out, 60%, that's not too bad at all, really. And it can only get better as more practice and feedback is received. Before we continue, if you're considering a move towards working in health and safety, it's absolutely essential that you're well prepared. That's why I want to take a quick second to let you know that you can study for the NEBOSH Managing Safely or the NEBOSH General Certificate, both national and international versions, online with us at Stockwell Safety. So if you're ready to take the first step towards a rewarding career in health and safety, see the links in the description to explore our industry-leading e-learning, NEBOSH and NEBOSH courses. Okay, this question is about training recommendations. And I'll tell you where most people go wrong on this one, is they miss the bit on different types of workers. So let's see how this learner gets on. So, to reduce the likelihood of a similar accident occurring, there are lots of areas where further training is required. Stated in a scenario, there is not much in the way of training. This initially shows that there is lots of space for training to occur. This training is required to be provided for multiple groups of workers. All training should be signed off by the employer and the employee to state that training has been provided and understood to the required level. Okay, there's no points available. I'm not saying that is wrong necessarily, but it's just like the way that the question is worded. It's not really asking for any of that background as such, but never mind. I mean, the learner's written quite a few words here for their answer to this question, so some points still might be picked up here with the rest of it. Some training is required for all workers. This is as follows. The scenario states that staff are given induction training when they start, but there is no refresher training. All staff should be subject to health and safety refresher training. Period. There is a mark available for pointing out that all workers should receive refresher training. So I'll highlight that for a mark. This would be to cover simple health and safety culture and rules. Health and safety rules should be written in a rule book, and workers should sign on receipt of this, confirming their understanding and cooperation of the rules. The scenario also states that some workers had received first aid training a long time ago, but many had left. During the accident, no first aiders were on site. All staff should receive a level of first aid training, which should be refreshed annually. In addition to this, a lead first aider should be allocated during every shift. It is this person's responsibility to take lead of situations, and there is a mark for first aid training. So I'll highlight that for another mark. Okay, so now we're on to top management. Starting from the top, management are required to obtain specific training. This scenario states that leadership was an issue during the accident. No one took charge. Duty managers should receive some form of leadership training to ensure that situations are handled well and no one is left flustered. Okay, I'm going to give a mark here because the learner has written that duty managers should receive some form of leadership training. Now, I think the learner means emergency situation training, but they haven't actually stated that, which works to the learner's advantage actually, because the mark available is for health and safety leadership training, as in like top management being, you know, taking the lead on health and safety in the company. But nonetheless, and I don't think that's what the learner actually means, but it's still, they've written that duty managers should receive some form of leadership training. So I'm going to give them the benefit of that and give the mark. It's also stated that risk assessments are very out of date. Health and safety managers should be allocated and they should receive risk assessing training. This will allow detailed risk assessments to take place and risks to be eliminated or reduced. I don't disagree with that personally, but it's not on the mark scheme. Said in the scenario, accidents are not reported. This should be the responsibility of the health and safety managers. They should receive training on how to report and investigate accidents. Well, everyone should receive, like, not just the health and safety managers receive training on how to report, because it's a report should be made by, for example, you know, anybody when an accident has occurred. So it's the right training, but to say that it's only sort of duty managers that should receive that training on reporting accidents, that's the bit that's wrong. All workers should receive training on how to report accidents. So I can't give the mark there. This should include formal reporting to external bodies such as the HSE. RIDOR is not an external body. RIDOR is a piece of legislation. HSE is the external body. When accidents are reported and investigated, trends can be spotted and hazards found. It is said that a worker had been newly appointed as maintenance engineer. This worker had been left alone on the evening of the accident. Prior to leaving engineers to work solo, they should be signed off as competent to perform the required work. The scenario states that workers are shown on the job how to perform their role. This instead should be formalised, recorded and signed off to ensure competency. Rather than say perform the required work, it would have been better for the learner if they'd have gone into detail about what that required work might be, because they would be able to drag that information out of the scenario, and they would have picked up some marks if they'd have done that, but they didn't. They just kept it quite vague by saying the required work. All engineers should be trained properly. This is to include how to use and maintain all plant and equipment, log any maintenance and follow the correct procedures. So we've got some marks here, you know, for the maintenance aspect of things. So it's the maintenance aspect there that gets the mark. This will allow machinery to be more reliable and to work to be performed safely when machines do go down. The time should be taken to make safe repairs rather than applying risk to increase productivity. I don't really understand that. The time should be taken to make safe repairs rather than applying risk to increase productivity. I'm not sure what that means. Specific training must also be given for the use of machinery and specialist tools. I believe there's a mark available there, yeah. Even though the learner did get the point, I still would prefer learners to, instead of saying machinery, there must have been machinery specified in the scenario. In this case, it was bread ovens and conveyors, I believe. So I would prefer all learners get into the habit of actually talking about, if they're talking about machinery, talk about the machinery in the scenario. Same with tools. If there's, you know, any specialist tools that were mentioned in the scenario, then then mention that in your answer. So I think in this case there were specialist tools required to remove the panels to gain entry into the bread oven. I would have liked the learner to have mentioned that. It just makes it more of a guaranteed thing that you are going to get the point, and without leaving it to any sort of doubt that you're going to get the point. It just kind of guarantees that you'll get the point. All floor workers should receive training on machines and their use. Workers should be able to spot when there's an issue and relay this to the engineers. This would allow workers to know when it's safe to continue work and when work becomes a hazard. Health and safety training will also improve the health and safety culture, as workers will know the rules and how to keep themselves and others safe. I'm going to give a mark here because for that whole kind of, what they're getting at here is basically health and safety awareness training for workers, which is a requirement. So I'm going to give a mark for that. And I think that is the end. Let's have a count up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10. So that would that is on course for a pass.